While athletes went for gold, silver, and bronze, the battle for Olympic green in London was equally fierce. Stephen Gracer from Harvard Business School joins me to grade the games.
I definitely give it an incomplete.
Man U goes public and the Padres find a buyer. Does Leo Hendry think the price is right?
Oh, I'd stay away. At this price, I'd stay away.
Plus, the Pac-12 network goes live this week, and it's a game changer. Hey, get with the program. Sportfolio starts right now. Hello, I'm Rick Haro. Welcome to Sportfolio, Bloomberg's inside look at the business of sports. The 30th Olympiad now's in the books, and it was memorable. Michael Phelps set a record for medals. Gabby Douglas became America's latest gymnastics sweetheart. The Queen of England jumped out of a helicopter with James Bond. Not really. But I spent the first week of the Games playing tourist in London. So before we look at the Olympic bottom line, I'd like to share a few snapshots from my trip.
All four of those pins means one of those one-eyed mascots. That is an absolute total necessity. All right, hurry up before the exchange rate goes down. Hurry up, hurry up. So I've become a certifiable Englishman. You know, most of the host cities before built airports, transportation infrastructure. Brazil is spending nearly $20 billion to get ready for their game. Luckily, London's had most of its infrastructure already in place and is doing a really good job managing it. The Olympic Committee recommends you take the javelin to Stratford Station. And at 140 miles an hour and moving 25,000 people back and forth in an hour, this is really the way to go if you want to go to Olympic Park. The International Olympic Committee doesn't want a corporate sponsor on a building that didn't negotiate with them, put money in their pocket. And the problem is, since 70% of the buildings for the Olympics in London region were already standing, there are 2 or 3 other buildings with the same situation. The name changed just for the Olympics. This is all too baffling to me. But that big building, that's the O2 Arena.
Well, that's not the O2 Arena. That's lost its branding for the Olympics.
But is it the same building?
Oh yes, yes.
And what about North Greenwich Arena? Is that the same?
Same building as well.
So it's 3 names in one building? It's not 3 buildings?
No, 1 building, 3 names.
The most confusing building of any Olympic building I've ever been to. What do I do with this? Does this work? Come on in. This incredible contraption was built in less than a couple of years, and it's really an example of a London legacy. So it's convenience, it's development, and it's money. What more could you ask for?
You can watch more scenes from my travels on Bloomberg.com. Suffice to say that I came back from London with plenty of memories. And this little one-eyed guy named Wenlock, he set me back only 12 pounds. But to examine the bottom line of London 2012, you need more than one eye. And in fact, you need more than one set of eyes. So I brought in an expert. Joining us now from the Harvard Business School is an old friend, the Richard P. Chapman Professor of Business Administration Emeritus at HBS, Stephen Gracer. Hey, Stephen, when you go in and tell your classes about the 2012 Olympics, what title will you give that lecture?
My initial title was The Olympics of Inclusion, which is a great descriptive title about the 2012 Olympics, especially with regard to women, Oscar Pistorius, etc. However, my larger construct is a title that I call Inspiring a Nation Through Sport Again. It builds off the official motto of the Olympics of 2012, Inspire a Generation. For me, inspiring a nation through sport again captures what the London Olympics were about.
Well, and Stephen, you've developed a set of criteria for judging the success of an Olympics, and I thought we could use some of those to evaluate the London Games and see how closely your grades match. First category, venues and housing. Housing, $1.5 billion, and 1,300 units made available in East London, probably pretty good. The venues piece, 70% of them were available already before the games started, and certain ones like the Velodrome, $150 million building they call the Pringle, won architectural awards. They've also got to figure out what to do with the Olympic Park Stadium. They've got to spend $250 million to cut it down to a soccer size. So overall, I'd give it an A- myself. What about you?
My grade is A minus also. I agree with you with regard to housing as a future important component, but part of my grade also comes from the fact that the Olympic venues incorporated the sites, S-I-T-E-S, as well as sites, S-I-G-H-T-S, of London in ways that were quite informative, even if people hadn't been to London before, although many people had. In addition, in the opening and closing ceremonies, one saw those sites, for example, Big Ben, St. Paul's Cathedral, etc.
Next, security and traffic. Traffic was great. Everybody was scared. Underground, 20% reduction in driving, but 3 million people taking the tube, the subway. It's called an Oyster card. I was there for 2 weeks, loved this, free all over, and I didn't even get out of the subway. I went from place to place to place on it. Cab drivers didn't like it. Security, the siege city gave way to the safe city. 13,000 troops, more than the Brits in Afghanistan, by the way, but people felt safe and no incidents. I would give it, being there, an overall grade of B. What about your perspective, Stephen?
I give the security component an A minus, and that's really the dominant one to me. This was a safe Olympics. The reason I knocked the original A grade down to A minus is that there clearly were problems prior to the Olympics with regard to the outsourced security firm basically not being able to fulfill its mission and additional military being brought into play. But this was not an authoritarian kind of security, and the fact that it was a safe Olympics speaks for itself.
Local economic impact. David Cameron, Prime Minister, may have overpromised $20 billion of impact during the Games, and the legacy will be there for certain components. Scotland, $1.5 billion in golf business over the next 5 years. I'll contribute personally to that myself. And legacy business from the Games. 5-year, $4.5 billion plan or more. But the grade there has to be incomplete as far as business legacy. If you have to do it now, I'd give it about a B. You're a business guy. What's your grade?
I definitely give it an incomplete because it will take some period of time to judge whether industry, that is British industry, and other British businesses have been enhanced as a result in the manner that China was so successful in doing in the years ramping up to the Beijing Olympics. But I share your view that it's incomplete, and for now, with a likely B in the looming.
Global brand impact. 100,000 staff and 70,000 volunteers, 20,000 of us pesky media, 302 events. Lord Sebastian Coe was an 11 record holder in the Olympics. He ought to own now the world record for management. It was an incredible window of the world. I would give it a resounding A+ for being there when I was there. What about you?
I have it down a little from that, but not a lot, because I subdivide it into 3 areas. The Olympics have been used as a global brand builder before, reaching back to 1936 in Berlin, and certainly 2008 for China. I subdivide it into 3 areas: sport power, business power, and political power. In the case of China, it was terrific sport power, it was excellent business power, and it was a reaffirmation of political power. For London, it was outstanding sport power. Number 3 in gold medals, is really generated huge amounts of national pride. It's an incomplete tending toward B, as we just discussed in the business area. And as for political power, I would say that that is not an objective for Great Britain in 2012.
So there you have it, a report card for the 30th Olympiad. My grades from ground level and Stephen Gracer's from the perspective of Harvard Business School. We'll talk more about merry old England later in the program. Man U goes public, and should you bet on their success? And I'm not done with Stephen Gracer yet. We'll tackle more Olympic topics, including the criticism of NBC's coverage. We'll be back without delay, so stay with us on Sportfolio. The Olympics brought together the world's finest athletes, and on September 6th, the most powerful leaders in sports will gather at the Bloomberg Sports Summit. Commissioners, owners, executives, and bankers will discuss the money behind the games. To find out more about this day-long event, visit BloombergLink.com. NBC Sports Group Chairman Mark Lazarus is scheduled to speak at the summit, and he's taken some heat for his network's coverage of the games, especially the decision to delay broadcasting marquee events like swimming, gymnastics, and track and field until prime time in the U.S. I want to welcome back Harvard Business School professor Stephen Gracer. Stephen, the ratings say NBC's strategy was a success, but the criticism continues. Does the network leave London as a winner or a loser?
I consider NBC Universal to be a really big winner from these Olympics. Despite the tape delay brouhahas, these were very high television ratings, starting with over 40 million viewers on the opening ceremonies and averaging over 30 million, the most watched non-U.S. based Olympics in 36 years, according to NBC. In addition, there was lots of engagement on social media, and clearly that's continuing to grow by leaps and bounds, showing programs at hours that are 5 hours different in the Eastern time zone, 8 in the Pacific, is not going to be a big winner for NBC. And BBC, which has made a lot of noise about this, I challenge them to deal with Rio when they are plus 6 hours, and when are they going to be televising the live events that happen at night in Rio.
Let's talk about the impact of social media in London. In my opinion, this was the top business story of the Games, and the bottom line is that the numbers prove that. Stephen, from where you stand, can new media and old media coexist profitably in the Olympic space?
I think they can, but the example I'd like to use is the way in which Olympic sponsors, major Olympic sponsors, were able to harness new media and technology approaches for what I call instant ads, or perhaps in the case of the Instant Champions set of ads that Visa and AT&T did, we might call them tape delay champions. This was really a terrific opportunity to keep people interested, at the same time tie it to the brand.
Let's look at traditional sponsors. Going into the Games, we looked at how top sponsors would activate their huge investments. In your view, which brands did stand out?
I think that P&G stood out, and they stood out because they came up with a concept and were able effectively to link it to the Olympics themselves. Let's remember that the Olympics are more than just sport, more than just competition. In fact, NBC covers it that way. They put a lot of emphasis on the human aspects, the up close and personal aspects. And I thought that P&G did a very good job of that. I would reinforce your point and say that without implementation and without the kind of creativity that links the traditional approaches to the new media, companies aren't going to be taking advantage of the money that they pay for the sponsorship opportunity.
And 11 top sponsors paid nearly $1 billion to the IOC for that opportunity. Visa has over $1.4 billion charged in retail to their credit cards. They're a winner. Citi with the Every Step of the Way campaign, that's huge as well. Finally, Stephen, hard to imagine an Olympics without Michael Phelps, but he swears he's retiring. How big a marketing loss is it to the USOC and others to lose an athlete who has carried their banner for the last 12 years?
Yes, it is true. Michael Phelps won't be there. Neither will Misty May and Kerry Walsh. But there are new faces emerging all the time. Let's think in swimming about Missy Franklin and the young gymnasts, Gabby Douglas, etc. There will be new ones. And believe me, with swimming and gymnastics in the first week, a big draw to both men and women, a very important component for NBC.
Professor Stephen A. Gracer from Harvard Business School, thanks for bringing your wit and wisdom to Sportfolio.
It's a pleasure sharing minds with you again.
We have another distinguished guest in the wings, Leo Hendry. What does he think of the price tag of the San Diego Padres? We'll also talk about the Manchester United IPO, which brings us to our Sportfolio Stumper. Before Man U, what was the last professional sports team to go public in the U.S.? Answer when we return. Here's the answer to the Stumper. Before Manchester United, the last pro sports team to launch an IPO in the USA was the Cleveland Indians in 1998. That stock opened at 15 and fell on the first day of trading, by the way. Leo Hendry, managing partner of Intermedia Partners, thank you for joining us.
That's a pleasure.
Indians, 1998, last IPO before Man U. Did you buy some of those shares?
I didn't buy either one, Rick. This Manchester United IPO is got a lot of messages for us, and it's a fascinating sport, English Premier League football, because it has a very lack of discipline around player salaries and compensation of the team itself. Fixed stadium costs, much like we have here in the United States, and increasingly fixed media values. And so you have to look at Man U as both a trophy buy, a la the Green Bay Packers in its local marketplace, and its business experiences, its business opportunities. And there's a big gap developing between its current public value, as it came out the other day, and its business value.
So is this the end of the marquee property markup, or is it not the right marquee property?
I think it's not the right marquee property. Each of these leagues, each of these teams in these leagues have valuation characteristics unique to themselves. It's hard to batch them up. In the UK Premier League soccer, about 2/3 of the cash flow, the earnings of Man U are pretty fixed. They're its television deal and its in-stadium attendance. So only about 1/3 of it is in play. And there's been some analysis which could suggest that as much as 25% is the real value of Man U versus its issue price.
Leo Hendry here on the spot. Man U, buy or stay away?
Oh, I'd stay away. At this price, I'd stay away.
Let's talk about the next one. The Padres seem to be sold for a valuation of $800 million or so. John Moore seems to be getting that VIG, as some people call it in the business. He was going to sell to a group with Jeff Moorhead for $500 million. We understand two different disparate prices. The Dodgers deal entered in the middle of that. What is the real value of the Padres?
Well, every club as a club has a pretty determinable value. This is sort of butts in seats against the player rules, the player salary rules that are imposed by the league. A team like the Padres in that marketplace probably is worth $500–600 million as a ball club. And anything above that is a suggested value on media rights.
Well, but the deal there, too, is they've got debt service on their stadium, great stadium, but big-time debt service. It also is the third smallest market in the National League. So how does that all factor in?
It also has a predetermined media deal in hand that's being inherited. So there's no upside into the foreseeable future. So this is a rich price. The Dodgers was a high water mark. The cover bid, so to speak, the bid below the actual price was hundreds of millions of dollars less. So there's still a lot of dispute as to what the real value of the Dodgers were. But in the short term, it's lifted all Major League ball clubs.
Final issue. You bid on the Dodgers, you bid on the Cubs. You're very active in transactional issues. You know the business inside and out. What's next?
Well, I think what's next is a rationalization of media values. With the advent of collegiate regional sports networks on top of professional regional sports networks, with NBC, CBS, and Fox trying to emulate, Rick, ESPN and its very high valuation, a point is going to come here where you're going to reassess all of these values.
Leo Hendry, it's great to get your perspective.
No,
Thanks for joining us on
It's a
Sportfolio.
pleasure.
Still plenty left on the program. The Pac-12 flips the switch on a brand new TV network this week. Commissioner Larry Scott tells us what that's going to do for his business as Sportfolio rolls on. Next week, 4 of our best interviews in one program. Andrew Luck, Kevin Plank, Bubba Watson, and Jeff Gordon find out what makes them tick only on Sportfolio. This week, the college sports media landscape gains a major player with the launch of the Pac-12 networks. Yes, that's networks plural, a national TV network reaching over 40 million homes and 6 regional networks within the conference footprint. Dom Chu gets the lowdown on the new venture from Commissioner Larry Scott.
Well, first of all, a lot of change went into putting us in a position to get that major TV deal with ESPN and Fox to be able to launch our own TV network. Our schools had to agree to pool all their media rights in the center, had to agree to expand, had to agree to divisional structure, had to agree to share revenue equally, had to agree to roll up the websites through the conference. So a lot went in behind the scenes before we were in a position to optimize our media rights value. But on top of that, I think down the road people will look back and see our ability to launch our own TV networks as the real dramatic game changer, in that from day one, we're going to have full national cable distribution with Time Warner, Comcast, Cox, and Bright House, and have enough subscriber fees to completely fund it ourselves and to own it completely ourselves. It's pretty unusual.
You're going to be self-sufficient then. This operation that you're going to have is going to be, in essence, a profit center, or one that can sustain itself without having the assistance of, say, other outside institutions.
Correct. From day one, this operation will pay for itself without touching the ESPN Fox money that's going to the schools. And we did not have to take an equity partner. We did not need a financial partner in this. So it's a startup, but a startup with a lot of help and a big head start.
You spoke about how difficult it was to get everybody on the same page. What was the hardest part about that process?
Well, no one ever likes giving up control when it's at a local level. And debates about revenue sharing are always the hardest in sport. So our big market teams, if I can call them that, are USC and UCLA in the LA market, second largest media market in the country. San Francisco is obviously a big market. Cal and Stanford, 6th largest in the country. And convincing those schools that had typically gotten more out of the media rights because they were on TV more often to socialize and share money equally. Ultimately, we found a solution whereby if we hit a certain revenue threshold in our negotiations in the center, then we'd share revenue equally, and we blew through that number. So everyone's very happy, and equal revenue sharing is so important from my perspective, in that the hallmark of any successful conference or league is strength and competitive equity from top to bottom. We've always been strong at the top, but it hasn't always been clear that our middle schools and lower schools, if I can call them, have had the same resources, same ability to compete. Now we will going forward.
If you wonder about the potential of this venture, consider that the Big Ten Network generated $242 million in revenue for its conference in 2011, making a $79 million profit after expenses. You don't have to be a math major to appreciate those numbers. That'll do it for this edition of Sportfolio. Our thanks to Professor Stephen Gracer, Leo Hindery, and Larry Scott for joining us. Remember to check out Bloomberg.com for past episodes and bonus video like my trip to the London Olympics. I'm Rick Horrow. Thanks for watching. See you next time.